Hey everyone, it's Jennifer and I'm here today with a video series I'm going to do to teach you some card making basics. So this is the card that I'm going to use in our series, and it uses our Swirly Bird stamp set and the Swirly Scribbles Thinlits. And let's just jump in and get started. Okay, so the first video in this series is going to be about how to cut the paper for your cards. So this is just a standard size card that fits into our invitation size envelopes, which Stampin' Up! Calls medium, and our clear and white and vanilla, all those envelopes will fit it. Okay, so we'll start out with a sheet of 8.5 by 11 Whisper White cardstock. You can really use any color cardstock you want as your card base. I use Whisper White and Berry Vanilla a lot, also Crumb Cake, but again, you can use any color you want. I just like to have a white or a light colored base because then I can add layers of colored cardstock and it makes my card look more fancy, basically. Okay, and then this is Stampin' Up's paper cutter. It does have an arm that extends over 12 inches in measurement, 14.5 actually, so you can measure for your scrapbooking or any of your larger projects. But the beauty of it is that it doesn't only go to less than 5.5 inches here. It goes to 6.25, so it's easy to measure your card bases, which are 5.5 inches for a standard card base. The arm here locks down, so you just unlock it to raise it up and put your paper in and measure. And then the reason it locks down, the main reason, is for travel, so that when you're traveling with it, it doesn't flip open, and also it holds your little mat in place. And you want to make sure that your mat has the groove facing up, and there are 2 grooves so that you can, when one gets full of little paper scraps, you flip it over and use the other one. And you can get a new mat from Stampin' Up, but don't use the flat side. Your paper will not cut properly. So make sure the groove is facing up, and just make sure you lock it when you're not using it. It comes with a scoring and a cutting blade. I have to label mine because I'm very forgetful. So the scoring is the light one, the light colored one, and the cutting is the darker. And of course you can buy new blades. Okay, so let's put our paper into the 5.5 inch mark. And how do we know it's 5.5? It's because it's just a half sheet. So this is 11 inches tall. Half of that is 5.5. Okay, so make sure you have it at 5.5. And simply cut. So I always cut towards the side that I have the paper rested against. So if I had my cardstock on this side, I would cut from here over, because it pushes it into that straight edge and keeps you having a straight cut. So if I cut on this side, I'm going to start my cut over here away from the edge of the paper. And to show you again why, if you cut it this way, it can push your paper out of place and make it cut more crooked. I actually prefer to cut on this side, so let me just do that. And now we have 2 cards, so it's economical, 2 sheets or 2 cards out of 1 sheet of paper, and you're ready to make your cards, your card base. Okay, now let's go on with the layering. So this is something I had to learn when I was a new stamper, for sure, and I literally had to relearn fractions, a fourth, a half, all that stuff on a ruler, because I had no use for that in my life before Stampin' Up. So you may have to relearn that, but once you learn it, it's so simple. On a basic card like this, the front of the card will be 4 1/4 inches wide, the whole thing. So for each layer, you subtract 1/4 of an inch. So this Dapper Denim cardstock will be 4 inches wide. Your Sweet Sugar Plum will be 3 3/4, and the white will be 3 1/2. So you're just going down 1/4 of an inch each time. Or let's say you started with a smaller sheet of paper that said Happy Birthday and you wanted to mat that, you would add 1/4 of an inch both directions. And what that gives you is an 1/8 inch border. Okay, so our Pacific point is going to be 4 inches by 5 1/4. And of course I already know those measurements in my head because I've been doing this so long. It's automatic. Okay, so I have a full sheet, and you don't have to start with a full sheet if you have some scraps left over, but I have a full sheet of Dapper Denim, so 5 1/4 by 4 So that'll be that piece. And then I do have a scrap of my sweet sugar plum. So, and see how it's bent? This is something I like to use my scraps for. It got bent, so it's not a card base anymore. I can use it for smaller stuff. So, I'm going to make my this cut first so that I have a bigger piece of paper left over as a scrap. That's another stamping tip. So that one was 4 inches, so I'm going to go down 1/4 of an inch to 3 3/4. And then it's 5 inches tall. And I must have made a card similar to this with this piece before because it's basically 5. I just have to cut the little sliver off there. Okay. And then I need a piece of white, so I cut this in half and I can make 2 cards out of that, but instead I'm going to use this other piece for making my layering piece there. Okay, so we had 4, then 3 3/4, so now we'll be at 3 1/2. And again, I'm making this cut first because it'll give me a larger scrap left over. And then it was 5 1/4, then we went to 5, so now we'll go to 4 3/4. Okay, and then we also have some pieces of cardstock here, and that's where I go into my cardstock storage and look for scraps of paper. And I just grab a bunch of scraps, and then I go over when I'm ready to do my die cutting and see what's going to fit in my, you know, the die that I'm using. So those are your tips on how to cut the paper. Use those 1/4 inch increments to go up or down to get your photo mats. And also, you see on some videos and blogs and websites, Pinterest, all that stuff, samples where the border is really skinny. Instead of a 1/4 inch, you add half of that, so 1/8 of an inch to your adding or subtracting. So if you're not familiar with all these measurements, get your ruler out and start practicing. I promise you, I really truly had to do that when I started stamping. I couldn't even, I knew where the 1/2 inch was, but I was like, what's a 1/4 inch again? And I had to learn it. So once you get really good, you'll learn your 1/8 of an inches, which is 1/2 of a half, and your 1/16, which is that first little mark there on the ruler. So anyway, I hope this helps you guys with cutting for your card making. And then in the next video, we're going to learn about stamping with photopolymer and rubber stamps. And then there'll be more videos after that. So I will see you guys soon. Thanks.